Former Senior Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cross had been working as a home healthcare aide in San Diego, California, for 9 months since leaving the Navy SEALs. At 37 years old, Ryan hadn't retired due to physical injury. He left because after 15 years of operations across multiple combat theaters, he realized he needed to step away from violence and high-stakes decisions to address his increasing PTSD symptoms before they became unmanageable. Research showed that between 11 to 20% of veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan operations had PTSD in any given year, with symptoms including intrusive memories, flashbacks, nightmares, hypervigilance, and emotional numbness that disrupted daily life and relationships. The 4 major PTSD symptoms were intrusive memories, avoidance behaviors, negative thoughts and mood changes, and heightened arousal and reactivity. Ryan had recognized these symptoms escalating in himself. The constant hypervigilance, even in safe environments, the emotional numbness alternating with irritability, the avoidance of situations that triggered combat memories. The decision was preventive rather than reactive, choosing a care-focused profession over continuing in combat operations until he became a liability to his team or himself. Between 44% to 72% of veterans experienced high levels of stress when returning home from active duty, with transitional stress symptoms including fear and worry about adjusting to new routines, connecting with family and friends, and finding meaningful employment. Now, Ryan provided in-home assistance to elderly and disabled clients, work requiring patience and compassion rather than tactical expertise. It was honest work that helped people, but the transition from protecting operators in combat zones to helping clients with daily living activities felt like penance for all the violence he'd participated in overseas. One of Ryan's regular clients was Mr. Harold Chen, 71 years old, a Korean War Army veteran who'd been paralyzed from the waist down for 3 years following a severe stroke that left him wheelchair-dependent. Harold lived alone in a modest house in a quiet San Diego neighborhood, fiercely independent, despite his significant disability, absolutely determined to remain in his home rather than entering assisted living facilities that would cost more than his fixed income could support. Ryan visited 3 times weekly on scheduled appointments to help with physical therapy exercises, meal preparation, medication management, and general household tasks Harold couldn't manage from his wheelchair. Harold had a service dog named Bear, a 6-year-old German Shepherd trained specifically for wheelchair assistance, work through a recognized service dog organization. Bear retrieved dropped items that Harold couldn't reach from his wheelchair, opened doors using specially designed handles, helped Harold with transfers between wheelchairs, and bed or bathroom, provided balance support during standing transfers, and most critically, served as Harold's mobility assistance and medical alert system when Harold experienced health issues requiring immediate help. German Shepherds were renowned for their intelligence, loyalty, strong work ethic, and protective nature, making them excellent service dogs for mobility assistance when properly trained. The dog was Harold's independence made possible. Without Bear's trained assistance, Harold would require 24-hour assisted living care he couldn't afford financially and didn't want emotionally. On a Tuesday afternoon at 14:30 hours, when San Diego heat made everything uncomfortable, Ryan arrived for his regularly scheduled visit and immediately recognized something was wrong using threat assessment skills from 15 years of SEAL operations. Harold's front door was partially open, despite Harold's strict routine of keeping it locked for security, and Ryan could hear raised voices inside. Harold's voice sounding distressed and fearful, and another male voice shouting threats. Ryan's SEAL training activated automatically despite 9 months of civilian work. Potential home invasion scenario, elderly disabled client in danger. Situation requiring immediate tactical assessment. Ryan entered cautiously using techniques from close quarters combat training and encountered a scene that made his tactical assessment immediate and comprehensive. Harold was in his wheelchair near the living room, clearly distressed with visible fear in his expression. A man in his mid-30s, later identified as Harold's nephew, Derek Chen, was standing aggressively over Harold in a threatening posture, shouting about money and legal documents. Bear was positioned protectively between Derek and Harold, exhibiting controlled protective behavior consistent with his service dog training. Low growl, defensive stance, not attacking, but clearly warning Derek to maintain distance from Harold. Ryan quickly pieced together what was happening using observation skills from years of intelligence gathering. Derek was Harold's only living relative, the person Harold's will named as beneficiary of his modest estate. Derek had been pressuring Harold for months to sign over power of attorney and move into assisted living facilities so Derek could sell Harold's house and access his modest savings accumulated over decades. Harold had consistently refused because entering assisted living would mean losing his independence, his home, and likely Bear. Most assisted living facilities didn't accommodate large service dogs. Now Derek had shown up unannounced, clearly drunk based on his slurred speech and unsteady movements, and was attempting to intimidate Harold into signing legal documents under duress. "I'm done waiting for you to die, old man," Derek shouted with vicious intensity. "You're going to sign these papers today, or I'll have you declared incompetent. And take it all anyway. You can't live here alone. You're crippled. You need to be in a home where professionals handle you like the invalid you are." Harold responded with dignity, despite obvious fear. "I'm not alone. I have Bear and my healthcare aide Ryan. I'm managing fine with appropriate support. You need to leave, Derek. We can discuss this with my attorney present if you have legitimate concerns." Derek's rage escalated visibly. "Your attorney? Your dog?" He turned toward Bear, who was maintaining protective position with professional discipline. "This animal is the problem. If you didn't have this dog, you couldn't stay here. Social services would put you in assisted living where you belong." Derek moved aggressively toward Bear, pulling back his foot as if to kick the service dog who was protecting Harold. That's when Ryan intervened, not because it was technically part of his job description, but because his SEAL training recognized multiple simultaneous crimes: elder abuse, financial exploitation, assault on a disabled veteran, and attempted harm to a service dog, all happening to a client who'd become more than just work to Ryan over months of care. In the second before Derek's foot connected with Bear, Ryan was between them with speed that shocked Derek, intercepting Derek's advance with controlled presence that communicated unmistakable capability. "Stop," Ryan said with the calm authority of 15 years of operations in hostile environments. You're assaulting a disabled 71-year-old military veteran. You're attempting to coerce him into signing legal documents under duress. That's financial elder abuse. And you're trying to kick a certified service dog trained to assist someone with disabilities. That's elder abuse under California Welfare and Institutions Code 156.1.30, financial exploitation, assault, and violation of California Penal Code 365.5 regarding interference with service animals. I'm a witness to all of it. This needs to end now. Derek spun toward Ryan with alcohol-fueled aggression, finding a new target. Who the hell are you? Get out of my family's business. This is between me and my uncle. You're trespassing in a private home. Ryan maintained protective position between Derek and both Harold and Bear. I'm Harold's healthcare aide with legal authorization to be here during scheduled appointments. You don't have authorization. Harold asked you to leave. You're intoxicated. You're threatening a disabled veteran. You attempted to assault his service dog who's protecting him, and you're trying to coerce him into signing documents while drunk and threatening him. Those are multiple crimes under California law. Leave now, or I call police and provide witness testimony to elder abuse and assault. Derek made a critical tactical error. He shoved Ryan aggressively with both hands, attempting to push past him toward Harold. I said, get out. This is family business. That old man is going to sign those papers whether he wants to or not. Ryan didn't respond with force. His SEAL training emphasized controlled de-escalation and minimal necessary response in civilian contexts. He absorbed Derek's shove, used the momentum to guide Derek away from Harold using leverage rather than strikes, and maintained protective positioning that prevented Derek from further violence while not escalating the situation. You just committed battery on a witness to your attempted elder abuse. Harold, do you want Derek here? Ryan asked calmly. Harold, voice shaking but clear and decisive. No, I absolutely want him to leave. Ryan, please call the police immediately. Ryan maintained control of Derek using techniques that immobilized without causing injury while calling 911 on his cell phone with practiced efficiency. This is Ryan Cross at 3247 Maple Street in San Diego. I'm a healthcare aide for an elderly disabled client. I'm witnessing attempted elder abuse and financial exploitation of a disabled Korean War veteran. The suspect is the victim's nephew, currently intoxicated, attempted to assault the victim's service dog, and has committed battery on me when I intervened to protect my client. Suspect is currently restrained without injury. Please send officers and adult protective services. Derek continued threatening despite being controlled. You're done. I'll sue you for everything. I'll have you arrested for assault. My uncle is incompetent. Those documents prove it. He needs assisted living. That dog shouldn't even be here. It's dangerous. Ryan's response was delivered with precision born from years of operational discipline. Harold is a competent adult with legal documentation supporting his living arrangements and comprehensive care plan. Bear is a certified service dog trained specifically for wheelchair assistance work under ADA provisions and California disability law. You arrived intoxicated, attempted to coerce Harold into signing documents under duress. That's financial elder abuse under California Welfare and Institutions Code 156.30. You attempted to kick his service dog. That's interference with a service animal under California Penal Code 365.5. You committed battery on me when I intervened to protect my client. 8 minutes of this incident are recorded on Harold's home security camera system. Your threats are documented with audio. Police are en route. San Diego police arrived within 6 minutes, along with Adult Protective Services representatives who specialized in elder abuse cases. Ryan provided detailed statement using his SEAL operational reporting skills honed over 15 years. Comprehensive timeline with specific timestamps, specific legal violations with statute citations, complete witness account, security camera documentation confirming every detail. Harold confirmed Derek's explicit threats, the coercion attempts to sign legal documents while Derek was intoxicated and threatening, and that Harold had requested Derek leave multiple times before Ryan intervened. Bear's training vest and service dog certification documentation were photographed and documented by officers. Derek was arrested for elder abuse, attempted financial exploitation, battery, and interference with a service animal. 4 separate criminal charges. Adult Protective Services representatives documented Harold's living situation thoroughly, confirmed through comprehensive assessment that he was mentally competent and appropriately cared for with proper support systems, and noted in their official report that Harold's independence depended critically on Bear's trained assistance work. The situation appeared resolved. Derek was charged with multiple crimes. Harold was safe, with protective services monitoring, documentation comprehensively supported prosecution. But within 72 hours, Derek's attorney, a high-priced lawyer specializing in family law and conservatorship cases, began an aggressive legal campaign, filing for emergency conservatorship, claiming Harold was incompetent and living unsafely, petitioning to have Bear removed from the home, claiming the dog was dangerous based on his protective behavior during Derek's assault, filing assault charges against Ryan for excessive force and battery, and leveraging family relationship to claim he was the only one who truly cared about Harold's welfare and safety. Harold's attorney, a public interest lawyer who specialized in disability rights, contacted Ryan with grave concern. Derek is using his family status and substantial financial resources to pressure Harold into assisted living through legal maneuvering. The conservatorship petition claims Harold's reliance on a service dog proves he's mentally incompetent to live independently. They're arguing that needing a dog means he can't make decisions. If successful, Derek gains complete control of Harold's assets and all life decisions. Harold will lose his home, his independence, and likely Bear. Assisted living facilities often don't accommodate large service dogs, and Derek's petition specifically requests Bear's removal as a dangerous animal. Ryan, your intervention is being portrayed as an employee overstepping authority and assaulting a family member. Derek's attorney is arguing you assaulted him and made the situation worse rather than better. Ryan's first instinct was to step back from confrontation. He was a healthcare aide with no legal training, not a lawyer, and the kind of extended legal battle Derek's resources could fund would trigger his PTSD symptoms severely. Veterans with PTSD often struggled with hypervigilance, irritability, difficulty sleeping, and being easily startled, symptoms that legal battles and confrontation significantly exacerbated. But the situation represented everything Ryan had left combat to pursue, protecting vulnerable people who couldn't protect themselves, providing dignity to those who'd served their country with honor, defending independence earned through decades of sacrifice and resilience. Harold was a Korean War veteran who'd survived brutal combat, a devastating stroke that paralyzed him, and 3 years of rebuilding his life with determination. He deserved to keep his home and his service dog that made independence possible. Ryan made a decision that required confronting his PTSD triggers. He was organizing Harold's comprehensive defense using his SEAL operational planning skills applied to civilian legal context. Over 2 intensive weeks, Ryan compiled comprehensive documentation that would support Harold's competence and independence. Detailed daily living logs showing Harold's medication compliance, cognitive function, and self-care abilities. Physical therapy, progress notes demonstrating Harold's engagement and improvement. Medication compliance records proving Harold managed complex medical regimens independently. Cognitive assessments from Harold's doctors showing normal mental function. He coordinated with Harold's primary care physician and neurologist to provide detailed medical testimony about Harold's competence and capacity for independent living with appropriate support. He worked extensively with service dog organizations to document Bear's specific training, certifications, and the critical necessity of Bear's assistance for Harold's mobility and independence. He provided his own detailed testimony about Harold's daily capabilities, decision-making ability, and Derek's attempted exploitation. Documentation that would prove Harold was managing his life successfully with proper support rather than being incompetent. The conservatorship hearing became the legal battleground where Harold's independence would be decided. Derek's high-priced attorney argued persuasively to the judge, "Harold Chen is a paralyzed 71-year-old man living alone, dependent on a large dog and a part-time healthcare aide who visits only 3 times weekly. This is fundamentally unsafe. He needs professional 24-hour care in a licensed facility where trained staff can ensure his safety and well-being. His nephew Derek is his only living family member and genuinely wants to ensure proper care in an appropriate licensed facility rather than this unsafe independent living situation." Harold's disability rights attorney countered forcefully with Ryan's meticulous documentation. Harold Chen is a competent adult successfully managing his disability with appropriate support systems. His service dog Bear is a trained assistance animal providing essential mobility support under ADA provisions and California disability law. His healthcare aide Ryan Cross is a retired Navy SEAL providing excellent professional care 3 times weekly. The only threat to Harold's safety was his nephew's drunken attempted assault and financial exploitation captured on security video. Harold's independence is protected by federal law, supported comprehensively by medical professionals, and earned through decades of self-reliance and military service. Ryan testified about the incident with SEAL precision account that included every relevant detail. Derek's visible intoxication based on slurred speech and unsteady gait, explicit threats about taking Harold's assets, attempted violence toward both Harold and Bear, and coercion attempts to sign legal documents under duress and threats. Security camera footage corroborated every single detail of Ryan's testimony, showing Derek's aggressive behavior, Harold's repeated requests for Derek to leave, Bear's protective positioning, and Ryan's controlled intervention without excessive force. Harold's primary care physician testified that Harold was mentally competent with normal cognitive function, physically capable of living independently with appropriate support systems, including his service dog and healthcare aide, and that removing him from his home would likely cause severe depression and health decline. Harold's neurologist provided expert testimony that despite paralysis from his stroke, Harold's cognitive function was completely normal, and that he demonstrated excellent judgment in managing his medical care and living arrangements. Service dog training organizations provided documentation that Bear was a certified service dog who'd completed hundreds of hours of specialized training for wheelchair assistance work, that removing Bear from Harold would eliminate his primary mobility support system, and that Bear's protective behavior during Derek's assault was appropriate trained response to threats against his handler. The judge's ruling was unequivocal and comprehensive. Conservatorship petition denied. Mr. Harold Chen is clearly competent based on extensive medical testimony and documented evidence, appropriately supported by professional healthcare assistants and a certified service dog, and absolutely entitled to live independently as protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act and California Disability Rights Statutes. His service dog Bear is essential to his mobility and independence under federal disability law. His healthcare aide, Mr. Cross, acted entirely appropriately to prevent elder abuse and assault. His intervention was measured, professional, and protected Mr. Chen from criminal exploitation. Derek Chen's petition appears motivated primarily by financial interest in his uncle's assets rather than genuine concern for his uncle's welfare and safety. Petition dismissed with prejudice. Protective order issued preventing Derek Chen from contacting Mr. Harold Chen without legal supervision and court approval. Derek Chen faced comprehensive criminal prosecution for his assault and attempted exploitation, convicted of elder abuse under California Welfare and Institutions Code, attempted financial exploitation, battery on Ryan Cross, and interference with a service animal under California Penal Code 365.5. He received 18 months probation with strict conditions, mandatory alcohol treatment for his substance abuse issues, and a permanent restraining order preventing any contact with Harold without court supervision. Harold maintained his hard-won independence, continuing to live successfully in his home with Bear's essential assistance and Ryan's professional healthcare support 3 times weekly. Adult Protective Services conducted regular monitoring visits to ensure Harold's needs were being met, consistently documenting in their reports that his living arrangement was safe, appropriate, and respectful of his autonomy and dignity. Ryan discovered through advocacy work that Harold's situation wasn't unique or isolated. Thousands of disabled veterans across the country struggled to maintain independence when family members or institutions questioned their capacity to live independently with service dog support. Research showed that service dogs could significantly reduce PTSD symptoms in veterans, with studies demonstrating 66% lower odds of PTSD diagnosis after 3 months of partnership and significantly lower symptom severity. Veterans with service dogs experienced lower PTSD symptom severity, 41.9 versus 51.7 on standardized measures, lower anxiety, lower depression, and higher psychosocial functioning. Service dogs profoundly catalyzed post-traumatic growth among veterans with PTSD through providing emotional support and companionship, enhancing interpersonal relationships, reducing social isolation, reshaping core beliefs, and reinforcing sense of purpose. Ryan began volunteering extensively with veteran service dog organizations, helping disabled veterans document their competence and protect their legal rights to live independently with properly trained assistance dogs. His SEAL operational planning skills proved invaluable in helping veterans compile comprehensive documentation that protected their independence against family members or institutions claiming they were incompetent. 1 year after the incident that tested everything Ryan believed about his transition from combat to caregiving, Ryan was invited to speak at a major veteran disability rights conference alongside Harold and Bear. The conference attracted hundreds of attendees, including disabled veterans, service dog organizations, disability rights advocates, and healthcare professionals. Asked why he intervened when it meant confronting extended legal battles and PTSD triggers that could have destabilized his careful management of symptoms, Ryan's answer became foundational for veteran service dog advocacy programs nationwide. Harold is a Korean War veteran who earned his independence through military service and survived a stroke that would have destroyed most people's will to continue. Bear is a trained service dog providing mobility assistance that makes Harold's independence possible under federal disability law and California statutes. Derek was attempting elder abuse and financial exploitation disguised as family concern for Harold's welfare. Intervening meant using my SEAL training not for combat operations, but for protection, protecting a veteran's dignity, a service dog's right to work under disability law, and the fundamental principle that disability doesn't eliminate autonomy or competence. Harold didn't survive war and devastating stroke to lose his home and independence to a nephew who saw dollar signs instead of a human being deserving respect. Research shows veterans with service dogs have significantly lower PTSD symptoms, 41.9 versus 51.7 on standardized measures, and 66% lower odds of PTSD diagnosis after 3 months. Service dogs aren't luxuries for disabled veterans. They're essential tools preserving independence that federal and state laws explicitly protect. Sometimes the most important missions aren't overseas in combat zones. They're in living rooms where disabled veterans need someone who remembers that service dogs exist specifically to preserve independence, that paralysis doesn't equal incompetence, and that protecting vulnerable people sometimes means standing between them and family members whose greed matters more than dignity earned through decades of service and sacrifice. The presentation included demonstrations of Bear's trained assistance work, retrieving dropped items, opening doors, helping Harold with wheelchair transfers, that proved to attendees exactly how service dogs enabled independence for disabled veterans. Harold spoke movingly about what Bear and Ryan's intervention meant. "I survived combat in Korea and a stroke that paralyzed me, but Derek almost took what mattered most: my home, my independence, my dignity, and my service dog, who makes all of that possible. Ryan didn't just stop an assault. He fought for my right to live in my own home with the support I need, and the dog who enables my independence. That's what service means in civilian life." 18 months after the conservatorship hearing, Ryan had expanded his volunteer work significantly, to include training other veterans and healthcare workers in recognizing and preventing elder abuse of disabled veterans, particularly situations where family members attempted to exploit veterans by claiming service dogs proved incompetence. He also began consulting with disability rights organizations about how service dogs enabled independence for disabled veterans and how to protect those rights against exploitation. His work helped change California regulations to explicitly protect disabled veterans' rights to live independently with service dog support, making it significantly harder for family members to claim that needing a service dog proved incompetence. Ryan's PTSD symptoms, ironically, improved through this advocacy work. Research showed that veterans who found meaningful purpose helping others experienced reduced PTSD severity and improved functioning. Harold continued living independently in his home with Bear at age 73, proving that disabled veterans could maintain dignity and autonomy with appropriate support. Derek's attempted exploitation was documented in elder abuse databases, preventing him from exploiting other vulnerable relatives. 2 years after that Tuesday afternoon intervention, Ryan received recognition from the Department of Veterans Affairs for advocacy work that helped protect hundreds of disabled veterans' rights to live independently with service dog support. During the recognition ceremony, Ryan was asked about the lasting impact of transitioning from SEAL combat operations to caregiving and advocacy. His answer captured his complete journey. "I left the SEALs because PTSD symptoms were escalating, and I recognized I needed to step away from violence before I became a liability." Research shows between 11–20% of veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan operations have PTSD, with symptoms including hypervigilance, emotional numbness, irritability, and avoidance behaviors. I exhibited all of them. Caregiving seemed like penance for violence I'd participated in. But Harold's situation taught me that protecting vulnerable people doesn't end with combat retirement. It just changes form. Research shows veterans with service dogs have 66% lower odds of PTSD diagnosis and significantly lower symptom severity. Service dogs enable independence for disabled veterans by providing mobility assistance, medical alerts, and companionship that reduces isolation. Derek represented the kind of exploitation I'd fought overseas. Powerful people hurting vulnerable people because they could. Intervening meant confronting my PTSD triggers, but watching Harold lose his independence would have been worse. Sometimes healing from combat trauma means finding new missions that matter. Missions in living rooms where disabled veterans need someone who understands that service dogs aren't pets or luxuries. They're essential medical equipment that federal law protects, and that warriors who transition from combat to caregiving discover that protecting vulnerable people from exploitation requires the same courage as overseas operations, just applied with patience instead of weapons. The nephew who attacked his disabled uncle and hurt his K-9 guard dog learned that a Navy SEAL stepping in meant not just physical intervention, but comprehensive operational defense, protecting a veteran's independence. Proving that service dogs aren't luxuries for disabled veterans. They're essential tools preserving autonomy that federal and state laws explicitly protect, and that warriors who transition from combat to caregiving understand matters more than convenience, profit, or institutional assumptions about what disabled veterans can manage when given proper support and someone willing to fight for their right to live with dignity in their own homes.